of Sword and Shield, I think IV breeding is not that complicated. It can be kind of long-winded, and I hate being an asshole and going and doing that annoying thing of like telling people it's like if you don't want to IV breed in a game like Sword and Shield that gives you all of these great options, that you're kind of being lazy and just complaining for no reason. And the whole, because I don't want to come off like an ass, but I think Sword and Shield is fine, because you want to talk about breeding being complicated. Try making a competitive Pokemon in some of the older games, and then complain to me about fucking time-wasting nonsense. Sword and Shield gives you plenty of options, and going forward, I thought about it, and I technically wouldn't mind IVs sort of not existing. However, just because of this very small, pointless thing, and if they let you do this, going forward, I wouldn't mind sort of the, like, grit bullshit happening, which is basically, I want an ability to edit those up and down. And the only reason is because if you can't edit those up and down, and you can only edit them up, then that means, even if it is a smaller number, Trick Room is a really good example of this. Say, Trick Room, the slowest... Damn it. Trick Room makes the slowest Pokemon move first. And that would mean, even if it is a smaller number of just overall growth, if you get Old verse 9, I was about to say,
What?
If you pulled a certain item out of your ass, I was going to laugh. One of the only ways to get an Ursaluna as an evolution requires this item, and one of the best ways to get that item without...
is to dig up on the right, Ursaluna?
Yeah. And that causes people to grind. Like, slowly, meticulously grind. Anyway, going back to my point. If, going forward, they were going to sort of remove IVs in the sense of using a system like this game, I want the ability to move those numbers up and down, because if you can move them up and down, that fixes the biggest problem with Pokemon, which isn't the thing a lot of people immediately think of, where everyone's like, oh, if you could just increase stats like this game, any Pokemon could have, like, maxed out stats, and that would be amazing, because that would mean we could take, like, the starter we got at the beginning of the game and make it competitively useful, and that, like, never happens in Pokemon, and that would mean your team could basically, it's like, that would mean your team could actually use competitive Pokemon of just random shit you find without needing to breed. And because of that, you could actually truly make fast competitive Pokemon without needing to sit there and breed and waste a bunch of time, since the stats are increasing naturally from items. But the reason that I only want this system to exist if you can lower stats is because this system will still fall apart a little bit, where a move like Trick Room makes the slowest Pokemon move first. Meaning, even if it is a marginal difference, just because of how stat growth works, a 0 speed, even in a game like this, a 0 and a 1, I believe do have a 1 or 2 point difference. And because of the way, in a game like this, that's not as important, where you could maximize speed in a game like this and be fine, since Trick Room basically doesn't exist in this. But if they applied this system to a new Pokemon game, for traditional sets, it sounds fine. It's like, oh, I could just take any Pokemon and make them all perfect, and everything's okay. I don't get why you would ever want, like, IVs, but then it's like, if the system does not allow you to get zeros, and the only way to get a 0 is to mess around until you catch something with a 0, that would mean that when it comes to weird shit like Trick Room, you're still going to have that unfortunate thing that is the problem with Trick Room, that, and this is coming from someone that makes Trick Room, but this just always kind of irks me anyway, more so for things you can't breed. I can breed an as pull a 0 into X. I will always use this now as a fucking example. I have a Glacier. I have a Glacier and a Master Ball with a 0 IV in speed. And the reason it is a Glacier and a Master Ball, Glacier, every time you encounter it, it would roll the stats, basically. So I saved in front of it, threw a Master Ball, checked if the speed IV was 0. If the speed IV was not 0, I reset the game. I basically slowly, on and off, set for a couple of hours for 3 days. This was only a few hours a day. I sat there until I finally got Glacier with a 0. And because that was worth using a fucking Master Ball. But the reason I bring up the fucking Glacier thing, if you want a Trick Room Glacier with maximum negative speed, like the lowest fucking negative speed, and thankfully fucking Nature Mints exist, so all I had to do was get the speed IV. I didn't need the Nature. I ended up using a Mint on that, but that's fine. Fucking getting a Glacier with a 0 speed IV, which it is a legitimate Glacier that I sat there grinding. I wasted a fucking Master Ball for that, which technically means it's not a waste, since that did just speed up the fucking hunt. And that is so...
Oh, but don't you know, because Glacier is 3 guaranteed speed IVs, getting a 0, has 3 guaranteed, like, IVs, meaning getting a 0 speed IV is like 1 in a billion. That's kind of sus. You probably cheated. I'm just going to leave this joke at that and not elaborate farther for the people that don't get it, but if you get it, you fucking get it.
I did what most people were doing, hunt that thing in a Master Ball so you get a 0.
I would just like to point out every Glacier / Ice Rider I have ever seen Wolfie use is in a Master Ball. Again, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't.
Because the reason you see almost every one of them in a goddamn Master Ball...
Oh, I wish I had realized that sooner. You can...
Yes. The game... The game gives you an extra Master Ball. And because of getting an extra Master Ball. And I really need to go on this fucking rant to make my other point. Having an extra Master Ball. Everyone recommends. And I looked at a bunch of different guides and discussions where people were like, how do you get a Glacier with a 0 speed IV? And people basically said, if you want a Glacier with a 0 IV in speed, basically, just chuck Master Balls at it until you get a 0. Because a Master Ball is worth using to save hunt time, simply because it is a guaranteed catch, and you're trying to catch it and reset the game until you get the favorable thing you want, which in this case was a 0 speed IV. Because Glacier is a legendary.
The defeat one, I'll use Absorb and get...
Because Glacier is a legendary, and you can't breed a Glacier, me having a 0 IV in speed Glacier automatically me having a 0 speed IV Glacier, which I did, grind for, means if we were having a match with Trick Room, Glacier's speed is 30, and I used the Nature Mint on it. I have a 0 speed IV, and I used a Brave Mint, so it's attack up, speed down. My Glacier is one of the slowest Pokemon in Trick Room. And the reason I'm harping on this, it's a legitimate fucking Glacier that I use a Master Ball on. But I took the time to fucking grind to get that 0. A Pokemon like Glacier, if you want a 0, you have to grind. And if you want a Glacier with a 0, and...
That's a new boy.
New in asterisk. It's... Anyway.
Actually, I say that's a new boy, but... That's the...
It's a Burmy?
That's the Burmy. It's not the Wormadam, meaning it's actually not considered a different species.
But it has a different cloak. But no number of leap out of trees is good, and you technically
I got that one before then. The leaping out of trees, not the...
No, it was 4 of 6. It's more... Damn it. It's more about the fact that the slightly different...
I'm sure if I were to go at it right now,
back to my fucking long-winded Trick Room point.
Well, I just catch a bunch of shit. Let's see, do they have Call, defeated in the fire move, seen you, confusion, buzz, agile, and the... Well, actually, the leap out of trees, 1 of 1, so I actually...
Yes.
Yeah, it was. So the game doesn't give you anything for beating them with a, for beating them with, like, the other cloaks, but I did get an update.
Back to my point. Because this has always bothered me in Pokemon more. A Pokemon like Glacier, you only get 1 per save, because it is basically a legendary. And it's a minor legendary, so it's generally allowed in all competitive formats, since it doesn't count as a restricted Pokemon on its own. If I used a Glacier in a competitive battle that restricts major legendaries. Like, we're using VGC rules, but we cannot use banned Pokemon. I could bring a Glacier to a match and be perfectly fine as long as it's not an Ice Rider version fused with Calyrex. Glacier on its own is legal. Because I painstakingly reset for a 0, I have basically the best sort of Trick Room Glacier, other than someone also bringing up the fucking semantics of, oh, but like VGC Glacier would commonly run like a 4 or a 5 IV because it's speed. That means it's now faster than this Pokemon if Trick Room is not active. Under Trick Room, you lose a couple of speed matches, but outside of Trick Room, you will always beat these key threats, and these key threats are important, but like, just for the sake of maximum speed, I have a 0 because I wanted it, but if you have a minor legendary, if you have a minor legendary, like a Glacier, because you can't edit the IVs in a negative sense and make them lower, even going forward, this is the point I've been trying to fucking go to, even going forward with Pokemon, say they adopt this system in the next mainline game, where IVs technically don't exist, and it's just stats that you can increase, even if it's not as severe of a difference, having that 1 or 2 point difference in a stat like speed for, I use Trigger Room as an example because it's a really easy one.
It's really the only mechanic where that applies anymore because they ironically...
Truly applies.
Well, they took out Hidden Power. So
oh yeah, no. Hidden Power are gone, but like Trigger Room, slowest Pokemon is first. You could breed or keep catching certain random things until you get a 0. But using, and this...
it's the first form.
This game is funny because of, like, we haven't seen her yet, but this game basically has a Pokemon, and like a bunch of people fucking know about this. It's technically a new Pokemon, but because of how it's classed, it would be considered a tournament legal legendary. And this tournament legal legendary, people data mining, happen to know that this thing has a form that makes it incredibly fucking slow. So let's use this game and that thing as an example. Since it's basically a fucking legendary, you only get 1 on a save file. And let's say they just carry over the system from this game, pretty much wholesale, into the next game. And that would also mean Pokemon transfer from this game would just straight out have their, like, levels when they transfer up. So let's say they do not let you negatively affect the stats and drop them. That legendary, because it has a form that is really slow, say you could transfer that thing into the next game, the next mainline Pokemon, Scarlet and Violet. Say having a 0 does roughly work how it does with 0 IV, that having a 0 like grit level and speed means your speed is slightly more crap than something with a 1. If you cannot affect the level, let's say they allow you to use this Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet.
Damn it.
Because they allow you to use this Pokemon.
Damn it. Okay, plan B, I'm going to get the stun score in the Absorb, hopefully.
It's time for the question of the day, my overall thought on the topic. So anyway, this question is kind of a follow-up to another question I asked on a different part. Well, technically that was a set of questions. So I have a tiny warning for possible spoilers because I will quickly discuss a set of leaks, but these leaks are mostly about the EVs and IVs in Scarlet and Violet, and this one thing that can be useful in competitive play. But anyway, my question is this: do you agree with the point I started saying in this part about people that refuse to team build in Sword and Shield and complain that it is too difficult or that it takes too long are kind of being lazy? Because let me tell you, Sword and Shield is infinitely faster than other generations unless you are doing massive amounts of RNG manipulation in other generations. But RNG manipulation is entirely possible in Sword and Shield, so if you want to avoid straight out hacking and you have the time to sit down and learn certain RNG manipulation tricks, you can basically force the game to give you pretty much anything you would want, and that would mean you bypass the need to hack, and in some cases you could RNG manipulate so thoroughly that you would bypass the need for breeding. I think Sword and Shield are incredibly good games when it comes to being easy to team build, and I really do feel like a lot of people that refuse to team build are kind of just being lazy and want instant gratification. I'm not trying to be harsh, but that's just how I feel. And that brings me to the portion that is technically a spoiler. The way leaks have talked about Scarlet and Violet, it sounds like the Grit Rocks are gone and the regular EVs and IVs have been restored, except apparently bottle caps in this game are changed in a way that makes them far more useful, but leaks were vague about that, whether that means bottle caps can now raise and lower the stat, or if they made it so that a bottle cap works at any level, or at the very least, level 50. But more importantly, this other leak basically said that there is a team editor that lets you edit Pokemon like the hacking software PK Hex. However, it was never explained by the leakers if this team editor is a virtual team or if you can actually edit your real Pokemon. I saw conflicting reports. If that's the case, then people really don't have an excuse anymore, because apparently this game supposedly has been redesigned to make competitive team building super easy, because they realized that team building was a pain in the ass. And yes, while I will defend Sword and Shield, I do get why people can complain about it. I just think people that generally complain about it are just being lazy and don't feel like putting any amount of effort in under the veneer of, oh, it would take too long to build a team and I could never battle because I just don't have time to team build, when it's really not that difficult to team build in this game because of just all the tools you have. But anyway, I'm rambling and somewhat talking in circles. I just wanted to know if people agreed with me or not, and I wanted to start that little bonus discussion of virtual team builder or actual team editor, because that would finally be a great push into competitive for a lot of people that don't have as much time. Anyway, you can leave your thoughts, opinions, and answers in the comments, or you can leave them on social media. All of my social media links, as well as my Discord links, are in the video description. Now, as always, I need to be a shill for a minute. If you subscribe to the channel, and if you follow me on social media, that really helps our communities grow. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope I will see you all next time. So, as always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, everybody. I hope you come back someday. See you later.